Year 6, Miss Woodhill here. Hope you're all well and keeping busy while you're at home. Now, since school closed, I expect you've all been asking yourself the same question. What happened to Sophie and Charles in Rooftoppers? Well, fear not, because I have the book here and I'm going to carry on reading it to you. So a quick synopsis for those of you who might have forgotten or who weren't listening. No one wasn't listening, were they? You were all listening. So Sophie and Charles have decided that they're going to have to escape and travel to Paris in search of Sophie's mum, because the National Childcare Agency are saying that Sophie has to be taken into an orphanage and taken away from Charles. So we're going to join them now as they start their journey. This is chapter 6. If we were at school now, someone would put their hand up and say, Miss Woodhill, we've already read this bit. Or Miss Woodhill, can I go to the toilet? Or Miss Woodhill, what are we doing after this? Can I buy 5 minutes extra play? Well, we're not at school, so you're going to have to bear with me, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating a bit that we've already heard. We're going to start from chapter 6. The journey was not easy. Very few journeys are, Sophie thought, and they are made even more difficult when you are planning to skip a country illegally in broad daylight. Pack light, said Charles. If we are seen leaving, we must look like we're going to the dentist. The dentist? We never go to the dentist. To a concert then. 1 bag and nothing else. So Sophie took only her cello. She rolled up jerseys and trousers as tightly as she could and squeezed them into the corners of the cello case. When she was finished, there was room for only one more thing. Should she take her notebook or a dress, for just in case? A dress is camouflage, she told herself. You never know when you'll need a disguise. Grudgingly, Sophie added it and snapped the case shut. Charles carried only his briefcase. Judging by the way he loaded it into the taxicab, it was heavy. As they pulled away, Sophie thought she saw the curtain next door drop back and a figure jerk out of sight. She gasped and looked straight ahead. As they clattered down the street, she crossed her fingers and sat on them for luck. The train station, when Sophie pulled her case into it, was too full of shouting people and steam. Oh, said Sophie. Oh no. She said it very softly. Crowds made her ache. They were too much like a sinking ship. Oh, help. She felt a strong urge to scramble up the walls and hide behind the station clock. Charles, though, was unworried. His eyes were very bright. He said, Lord, it's impressive, isn't it? Smell that smell. Engine oil, Sophie. Then he took in Sophie's taut face and clenched elbows. All serene, my child? Of course. Sort of. Almost. Sophie winced as a horde of boys went roaring by, hitting each other. Not really. Do you know, I think the best thing to do in stations is to buy a handful of your favourite food and then find a corner to sit in and stare at the ceiling. Stare at the ceiling? Why? Railway stations tend to have fantastically beautiful ceilings. Sophie tilted her head and her hat fell off. It was true. The ceiling was a maze of glass and bright iron. It looked like 100 pianos. Charles felt in his pockets. From a jumble of string and paper and boiled sweets he extracted some coins. Here, there's a 6pence. Or, wait, there's a shilling, and you can buy some tea. Ask for it hot enough to burn your pipes or it won't be drinkable. Yes, thank you, of course. But wait, Charles, where are you going? To find a porter and secure our tickets. What if I lose you? Then I will find you again. But what if you can't find me? Sophie laid a hand on his overcoat. Charles, wait, don't go. She hated herself when she was like this, but her nerves were chewing at her insides. Sophie, you have hair the colour of lightning bolt. He smiled. His smile today was a very good one. You are not easily missable. At the food stall, Sophie hesitated between an enormous Chelsea bun and those round biscuits with red jam centres that Miss Elliot said were for common children. Sophie had never tried them, but they glinted like rubies. The woman behind the counter was a reassuring presence. She had a red rash on her cheeks and nice eyes. Chelsea bun, love. Eclair, strawberry biscuits. The thought of what Miss Elliot would say restored Sophie's courage. Biscuits, please. 6. There you are, love. Don't eat them all at once, pet, or you will be making closer acquaintance with the station privy. Sophie nodded seriously. She bit into one and found they glued her teeth together in a wonderful way. They did not taste remotely like strawberries, but they did taste like adventure. Going anywhere exciting, dear? Said the woman, clanking around in her apron for change. Sophie tried to say Paris through her sticky mouthful. She glanced at the station clock. 30 minutes and counting. Hunting, did you say? That'll be nice. Sophie's teeth were now well and truly jammed shut. She only smiled gooily and nodded. It was true in a way. She was going mother hunting. God and good luck go with you then, said the woman. She wrapped a Chelsea bun in newspaper and slipped it across to Sophie. For luck. Most luck happens on a full stomach. The train was twice the size Sophie had expected, and green. It was the green that emeralds and dragons usually come in, which felt to Sophie like a good omen. Look for carriage 6, Sophie, said Charles. You are compartment A. I am told it's usually reserved for the children of the Duke of Kent, but this summer they are shooting things in Scotland. You have it to yourself. They edged past porters with straight backs and starched collars towards the front of the engine. There was a narrow corridor running the whole length of the train, with sliding doors leading to the compartments. Sophie tried not to get in the way, and tried not to look too excited, and tried not to look too much like an illegal runaway. None of the three was easy. Here, Charles manoeuvred her cello case through the door and turned. His face was sparkling. It was the only one left, Sophie. I hope you don't dislike it. Sophie peered round his shoulder. Then she stared. Dislike it? It's like an imaginary game. People were pressing past the corridor outside. Sophie ignored them. It's so gilt. It's a palace. Charles laughed and pulled her inside and shut the door on the rest of the train. A very small palace, the travel-sized version, perhaps. The carriage was beautiful. Everything was child-sized and made with the delicacy and detail of witchcraft. Sophie tried to look as if she was used to such things, at least while the porter was watching them, but it was impossible, for it was the most polished, clean, gold-edged thing she had ever seen. The pillows were round and fat as a goose's stomach. The mirror was edged in gold. In fact, there was almost as much gold as edge as mirror. Sophie tapped it. It sounded solid. And see your chamber pot, said Charles. It's worth a look. She squatted to look under the bed. There, buckled securely to the wall, was a golden chamber pot with red carnations painted round the rim. See, said Charles, even your nighttime peeing is accessorised. But where do you sleep? Here also? The carriage had 2 bunks, but they were child-sized. Most of Charles would dangle off the end. I will share a bunk with an undertaker from Luxembourg. This is a hard word. A lugubrious sort of fate. Look that up in a dictionary, please, someone. Where are we? But I won't die of it. And after all, it could have been worse. He could have been Belgian. Charles smiled down at her. They were the only beds available for 3 weeks. I thought it would be better than the itch of waiting. Yes, waiting would have been impossible, she thought. She would have died. Yes, thank you. Now all serene? Asked Charles. Having no handkerchief, he fished out a clean sock and blew his nose on it. It sounded to Sophie like the trumpet of hope. You have everything you need? Yes, I think so. Although actually, her stomach rumbled, have we got anything to eat? Of course. How could I forget? The best part of any journey is the food. There's a restaurant car, but it won't be open for a few hours. I smuggled in as much as I could. Charles crossed to the wooden desk set into the wall and began to empty his pockets. First 6 apples, then sausage rolls, shedding their pastry all over his coat, and a thick slab of yellow cheese. From the back of his fob watch, Charles extracted a screw of salt. Finally, like a conjurer, he took from under his hat half a roast chicken wrapped in oiled paper. Oh, heaven! Oh, wonderful! Sophie added her biscuits to the pile, but kept back her Chelsea bun for later. She arranged the rest into a tower. There. It reached up to her nose. This is perfect. Now have we got everything? Sophie had just taken a mouthful of cheese. The taste was fantastic, salty and creamy, both together. The train shuddered and began to steam forwards. She had Charles and roast chicken and an adventure. Sophie spoke around her mouthful. Everything, she said. At Dover they changed from the train to the boat. The weather was choppy. The sea rumbled in front of them. It was grey and smelt wild. Sophie tried not to look down at it. She tried not to think of dead women. "All serene?" asked Charles. Sophie nodded, but she couldn't speak. To make things worse, amongst the passengers on the boat was a policeman. It was impossible, she told herself, that he had come for her. He was probably on holiday, but he still made her shiver. To be out of his sight, Sophie inched away down the boat until she was alone on the outside deck. She tried to ignore the sea. Ignoring the sea, though, is like ignoring a man with a gun. It cannot be done. It stretched out as far as the horizon, and though she squinted, Sophie couldn't see France. She gripped the rail and tried not to panic. Charles saw her face from halfway down the ship. His footsteps made no sound, and the hand he laid on hers was as gentle as a mother's. "Listen," he said. "Can you hear that?" Sophie could only hear the sea. "What?" Fear made her more snappish than she wanted to be. "What am I listening for, anyway?" "A murmuration," said Charles. "A good omen." "A what-oration?" "A murmuration. When the sea and wind murmur in time with each other. Like people laughing in private. There again, did you hear that?" Sophie was not convinced. Only people murmur. Sea roars, wind blows. No, sometimes sea and the wind murmur. The two are old friends. Oh. Sophie unpeeled her hand from the rail and gripped Charles's. She breathed in his overcoat smell and straightened her spine. "When they sound together," he said, "it means luck. A murmuration. A good omen." And that's the end of chapter 6. I will see you very soon for the next chapter. Take care. Be good. Bye.